Welcome into Analyzing Attitude, episode 5. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, and give us an oh hell yeah in the comments. We're breaking down the first pay-per-view that we reviewed. It's Degeneration X in your house. We have a special guest today from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It's Bryan Alvarez. Bryan, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I gotta ask, man, before we get into the pay-per-view, it just seems like you're everywhere, always talking about wrestling. When did you first get into professional wrestling, and why was this your passion?
Oh my God! I mean, how much time do we have?
I
was watching from the mid to late '80s, and then when I was in high school in the early '90s, I was already doing. We had our own wrestling promotion that we did out of a gymnastics facility, and long story short,
naturally,
what was that?
So UWC or YWC, right?
YWF.
Sorry.
YWF. Close.
Sorry.
But no, we had a promotion and it was local. And so we had a paper newsletter that we mailed out to everybody with upcoming shows. And in 1995, the gymnastics place said, you can't run shows anymore. Someone's going to get killed. You'd have to get insurance. And it was like some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
So we had to stop doing the YWF at the gymnastics place, but I still had this mailing list.
How old were you?
So I was 19.
Okay.
And so I sent out to everybody on the mailing list, the promotion's done, but I am going to be doing an insider newsletter here. And if you want it, it's $39.99 for a year. And like 12 people actually signed up. And from that, it officially launched June 12, 1995. So the 30th anniversary is coming up in like a week, actually exactly a week, which is also my 50th birthday, in fact.
I think you should do an anniversary edition and send it out to all 12 of those people again for subscribing.
I have no idea who those 12 people were. But actually, about 6 months ago, Dave, he went to Hawaii or something. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, well, there's no Observer this week. I'm gonna bring back the Figure 4.
There you go.
So I did one more Figure 4 weekly about 6 months ago. And so from 1995 on, I was watching WWF, WCW, ECW, a weekly newsletter. I watched all these pay-per-views. I reviewed every single one of them. I've watched every Raw, every Nitro twice because I went back and did it again. So
was that during the
remember
pandemic?
this pay-per-view. Well, we'll talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get into it. Let's start. The show opens with and again, this is in your house, Degeneration X. The show opens with the DX theme music highlighting with a highlight package. I love the way they kept throwing the word icon into the show package just to throw in there again. Hey, Shawn Michaels is the biggest deal. It's not Bret Hart. It's not Hulk Hogan. We have the guy, and our champion is the guy in the business. This is the final pay-per-view of 1997. It's at the Springfield, Mass. It's in Springfield, Mass. Drawing just under 7,000 fans in attendance, over 120,000 pay-per-view buys as well. So I think we all think about the Attitude Era and this fever pitch and the way wrestling exploded, and Goldberg and StoneCold Steve Austin in the front of TV Guide magazine and all these late night shows. But it still took a while after the start of 1998 for things to really take off here, and we kind of see that with the end of the In Your House era. And this pay-per-view doing very minuscule buys and not even a full house, despite Jim Ross telling us that the event sold out several times throughout the night while there's an empty crowd behind him.
Yeah, this was the first show after Montreal because Survivor Series was the November pay-per-view. Yep. And then this was the December pay-per-view. And they had not caught fire yet, but this was the week that it was either this week or the week prior on Raw that Vince did the famous Brett screwed Brett promo.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks ago.
It was 3 weeks earlier?
Yep.
Well, this was the week. Okay, so yeah, it was 3 weeks, whatever it was. The point was, when he did that, his intention was it was a babyface thing. Brett's a terrible guy. I did what was right for this company. His intention was to babyface himself. And of course, everybody watching it saw it as a heel promo. And so, they were trying to convince Vince to go heel, and he didn't want to do it. So I think this was the week where he first came out as Mr. McMahon. And I think he might have had the Stooges with him this week. I think it was on Raw or whatever. But so this pay-per-view this week is the beginning of what turned all of it around, because it was Vince turning heel, Steve Austin winning the title at Mania, Mike Tyson in January. That's everything, like everything that you see nowadays, TKO, all of these records being broken, it all stemmed from this week.
Yeah, and Brian, the only reason we know the exact week it was when the promo happened is it was episode 2 of this podcast.
Oh, well,
so we literally just broke it down. So
actually,
we've been reminded lately.
Real quick, I was going to ask you, Brian, because we the debate we have is when did the Attitude Era start? And we went off of the Raw after Montreal, and we just thought because of that was breaking kayfabe, Vince was stepping out of the shadows. But I know there was debates about Stone Cold's promo when he stunned Vince. What's your take on that?
I mean, it's hard. There was no like beginning. You know what I mean? It's an argument because there's not like one day. Right. I mean, you could go back a year actually. When they first did, there was like there was an episode with, I mean, really, if you want to go back, you could probably go to when Pillman pulled the gun on Steve Austin.
That's true.
I mean, you can really go very far back. You can go back to a year earlier when they did it was Bret Hart and Steve Austin had a brawl, I think, at a Raw. That was really kind of the beginning of Austin really being elevated. The actual formation of DX, you could probably trace it a little bit back to there.
Some people would say the Bret Austin double turn as well.
The double turn was
the blood dripping down into the teeth and all that.
I think the Attitude Era, you're really looking though at DX, the rise of DX,
right?
Because that was Attitude. Yes. As opposed to just, we're stealing some stuff from ECW, but in general, it's just the normal show.
Right.
I think really kind of this pay-per-view, this period right here is the beginning of the Attitude Era.
Right.
Well, let's jump into it. The pay-per-view starts with the highly anticipated light heavyweight title tournament championship match that everybody could just not wait to see. The crowd was absolutely dead for this, but let's get into it. The only two guys under a WWF contract at the start of this make the finals. No surprise there. Brian Christopher versus Taka Michinoku. And Brian Christopher is overselling everything he does, trying to get heat with the crowd early in this match, turning and laughing to everybody after everything he does. And the crowd just starts chanting Jerry's Kid at him, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And the highlight / low light of this match is when Brian Christopher goes for a plancha off the top rope, completely misses, and smashes his face into the guardrail legitimately and comes up bleeding and had a busted lip for the majority of this. And Brian is a guy that's been in the ring. Have you ever accidentally cut yourself open or smashed your face on something like this?
Oh, yeah. Not exactly like this, but it happens.
It actually was like the result in kayfabe that they ended up getting in real life. Just the smash lip.
Wrestling's still real, apparently. Right. But the something that would never fly today in this match is Brian Christopher lays in a really stiff dropkick to the back of Taka's head and then gives him a famouser and then pans to the camera and said, "I think that boy's dead." Not something that you would really see in the PG-13 era in this match. But Brian Christopher had some big moves. And he spent way too much time trying to get heat in this match and really almost killed the crowd. But Taka hits the Michinoku driver and gets the win and is the inaugural light heavyweight champion. What did you think of Taka's work throughout this tournament, Brian?
Well, I think the thing is you had a guy who was a great worker in Taka, and you had a guy who was a good worker in Brian Christopher, but they had two completely different styles. And, the thing with the WWF light heavyweight tournament is it was a reaction to the cruiserweight division in WCW. But with WCW, it was like Bischoff would bring in these guys from Mexico, Japan, and it's like, just go out there and go. And it's very much like AEW today. It's, you go out and do what you want. And in WWE, Vince had a certain style of wrestling that was like his style of wrestling. And so he didn't want that. He wanted his cruiserweight division was basically small guys working a WWF heavyweight style match, which is what this was. And it was like a good match, I guess, but it was horribly boring.
It was better than anything
that you would
tournament.
think when you think, oh man, light heavyweight match, junior heavyweight, whatever. It was just Brian Christopher is doing a Memphis match with Taka Michinoku. Taka didn't even get a comeback. It was like he got beaten up the entire match, and then, you know, Lawler missed the leg drop. Brian Christopher missed the leg drop, and then Taka just hit a Michinoku driver and pinned him. I mean, it was a total WWF. Actually, I can't say it was a WWF heavyweight style match because all those on this show kind of sucked. But it was a better than average WWF heavyweight style match between two little guys.
That's what I had here. Is like started off hot for like 2 minutes, too much heat, and then just ended.
Yeah.
I think 2 minutes is probably too long as well. But
it was still like the second best match on the show.
Yeah, which I was going to say is it was easily the best light heavyweight tournament match throughout the whole thing, and it was still like a C-. So that tells you any direction that this tournament went. But after the match is over, Tony Gurria, Pat Patterson, and a recovering Jerry Briscoe after the Kane choke slam 2 weeks ago shows up to deliver the title belt. And I thought it was cool that they tried making this feel like a big deal, despite them really handicapping this entire tournament, not really letting any of the matches go over 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's all they did, and they tried to make the belt look a little bit different. And like everyone and Brian said, that it was just a weak attempt to combat the cruiserweight division, and it just nobody was really into it. And throughout the whole thing, there's only a handful of good matches in the lightweight division. I thought.
Brian, I wanted to get your thoughts on the next match because we get the DOA versus the Los Boricuas, and this is essentially a copy and paste of the last 6 weeks of this manifested rivalry that's like race-based and has all these bad implementations underneath it. But I wanted to ask you wrote the book, The Death of WCW, and I wanted to know, like, is there anything that you saw during this era that seemed eerily similar to the end of WCW that if they continued to do, we may be having a different conversation about this promotion? And was this one of those things?
I think this was just a bad match. I mean, you know, the problem with WCW at the end was just the booking was atrocious. I mean, you know, they had bad finishes as well and bad matches, but it was just, I mean, they had a different way of driving off fans. But, you know, the thing with this show, it was every WWF show from this era. And that was a horrible undercard and a good main event with big stars.
Sure.
And WCW was the exact opposite. They would have a good undercard and a horrible main event with the big stars. And you only remember the last thing that you saw. Like, it's funny, when you guys said you were going to review this show, I had fond memories of this pay-per-view because I remember the main event. I must have watched that main event 50 times. So I go back to watch this show and I was like, my God, this show was horrible.
Why are these guys doing this?
Dude, this show was horrible. And, you know, I went through and watched the Monday Night Wars again. And, you know, we'd watch these WCW shows and, you know, there'd be some great stuff, but there'd be some horrible booking in the main event, some atrocious match in the main event. You remember what happened last. And there's a million reasons WCW died, but I didn't really see anything, you know, reminiscent of the end of WCW here. I just saw they had to fill up a show, had a bad match, sucked. That was that.
Kooky
the first
gimmicks.
of many, by the way.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of bad matches, next we get something that I totally forgot happened, and I wish I would still forget it, but unfortunately now I have to remember. Butterbean versus Marc Mero in a Toughman competition. Butterbean says he's been waving at Sable because he is concerned with how Marc Mero has been treating her. Sable says that she's going to come out in Marc Mero's corner because this has been a debate. We've been pushing this domestic violence angle, which is always great television. But Marc Mero interrupts Sable's interview and says that he didn't approve for her to do this interview. So we're not only doing this, we're doubling down on it again on a pay-per-view in front of 120,000 people.
Butterbean actually had a boxing match the night before this match, and Sable was a ring girl at that show. Celebrity ring girl.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
It was probably much better than this match.
I can't imagine it was worse, and the crowd absolutely hated it. In the first round, Mero runs to the ropes about 46 different times to try to get Butterbean away from him. Butterbean finally knocks him outside of the ring, and Mero hits him in the back of the head, just keeps doing all these dirty tricks to try to get the crowd to care. He even tried a drop kick to get heat, but the crowd just could care less. Marc Mero gets laid out and saved by the bell. They're trying to create all this false drama that you get in real boxing matches. Butterbean had to throw water on Marc Mero to wake him up for the third round. And Marc Mero puts everybody out of their misery in the third by delivering a low blow, and that's what they deemed as the reason to call the match. But he then runs away, and it looks like we're going to try to continue this thing for some reason. And the WWE did this several times, bringing people in from the outside world. And you brought up Mike Tyson a minute ago, and it's kind of hard to think of anything outside of Mike Tyson that actually worked, because this definitely did not.
You know, it's funny. I watched all this stuff twice, and in both promotions, it was interesting to go back. We went back 19 years after it happened. We did Raw and Nitro 19 years ago this week, and some of the stuff is exactly how you remember it. Some of the stuff that you thought was great is not as great as you remembered. Some of it's actually better than you remembered. And, you know, there were a few matches that, you know, back in the day, you know, like I think there was some WCW match, might have been War Games with Warrior, and it was like a -5-star match at the time. But we went back and watched it, and it was like, it sucked, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
This is one of those matches that at the time was absolutely atrocious, okay? But I have since seen 25 years worth of additional wrestling from all over the world, and that includes Butterbean versus Minoru Suzuki, which is probably the worst match of all time. I was there live, and I went back to watch this match. I was in fear of watching this, and I am not going to sit here and tell you that it was good, but it was way better than I expected. Like, Butterbean was mobile. They kind of threw punches at each other. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't good.
They were working shots, but he landed some.
He
some
hit him a couple of times.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen stuff way worse than this. Okay, like back in the day, this was a dud. This was a terrible match. Nowadays, after what I've seen, might get a star.
Yeah,
but
we're also 2 weeks removed from Shawn Michaels putting a little person in a sharpshooter, and this compared to that is probably a 5-star match.
Yeah, this was bad. It was not the worst thing I've ever seen.
I won't lie. I actually, like, it wasn't great or anything like that. I actually had fun with it, just because
you're better than me, bud.
Well, I had a double take, because when he did in the first round punch Mero out of the ring, I was like, what, did he actually like chip him a bit, and then he fell? And then Mero's chicken shit things that he was doing after each round was cracking me up, and the stool shot at the end looked actually kind of brutal. I don't know. Maybe it was a worked stool, but it didn't break.
It could have been a receipt from a couple of those shots that Butterbean threw as well. But looks like we're going to continue that feud on as well. And then easily the weirdest thing that I don't remember happens next. And Luna Vachon and brings out the artist formerly known as Goldust on a leash. And Goldust proceeds to read Green Eggs and Ham.
This was definitely Attitude Era.
To the crowd, and keeps telling them to shut up so he can finish. And then Luna just shoves him to the ground and tells him to come on, you scum suck. And that's the end of it. And then we just pan back to JR and King on commentary, like something normal just happened.
Did you actually make out what she said? Like, I just heard just like angry Vince McMahon come out through her.
Yeah, I had the closed captions on. Right. That's the only way I got that, by the way. Because Luna definitely hit some decibels when she was screaming. We get some semblance of Savior after this, because we get a Legion of Doom promo. But this isn't great either. Hawk refers to the Billy Gunn and Road Dogg as boogers that are stuck up his nose that he just can't get back or can't get out. Also, LOD has their shoulder pads back that the Outlaws stole 2 weeks ago without any explanation of how that happened either. But so apparently Billy and Dog are just nice guys and gave them back. But the Outlaws come out to the ring, and Road Dogg has maybe the funniest line of the night. And he asks the crowd to not feed the dinosaurs when they come to the ring. But LOD chases down the Outlaws up the ramp, and the brass that were out to deliver the light heavyweight title issue the Outlaws back into the ring. And I thought it was interesting here because as they're in this match, Hawk is 40, which is the same age that Roman Reigns is today. And Animal was just 36. Billy Gunn is 61 and is in better shape now than he was during this match and still performing in the ring. Also, Billy's only 2 years younger than Animal in this match, so Road Dogg doesn't really have the right to be calling people old at this moment, even though he's at 29 when this is happening.
Well, I mean, think about that Sergeant Slaughter match we're about to see. He was my age in that match, and he looked 65. I mean, God, it was a different time back then.
Yeah, physical therapy and personal training has come a long way. But this is a really good match. Physical, LOD got their stuff in. LOD goes to the Doomsday device. But the only problem I had with this is Henry Godwin comes out and interrupts the match, just like he did 2 pay-per-views ago, and it leads to a DQ and the Outlaws retain.
Well, it was a dumb finish of, the heel brings in the bucket, uses the bucket, the ref don't see it. Then the babyface gets the bucket, but the referee turns around, the babyface gets caught. So he's an idiot. He gets DQ'd. I mean, it was a terrible finish. There were so many there was like 8 matches on the show and like 4 were DQs.
It's also just a bucket.
DQ.
And I was
and
I was gonna say the DQ finish actually came 4 seconds into the match. The bell rang. Animal took the belt and hit, I think, Road Dogg with it. So and I saw they were really loose with the rules a lot on DQs in this era. Like the
Nation of Domination, or when Rock and Austin were wrestling.
Yeah.
It's like, well, is that next?
No, we get the boot camp match next.
Well, let me talk about the other one then, because golly. Yeah. But like the match starts with like the Nation of Domination going after Austin, and they specifically say this is okay because it's happening before the match. That's how they explain why there's not a DQ.
JR says it 3 times. The bell did not ring.
Yep. So then they start doing this match, and then like Farouk and the Godfather, Kama
Mustafa.
They attack Austin, and I'm looking at the ring, and the ref is looking right at him. I'm thinking, how is this not a disqualification? They're beating on him, they're pummeling him. Ref doesn't care, and on a show with 4 DQs, how do you do attacking the guy right in front of the ref and the ref doesn't do anything?
This is a good time to point out on the 5 or 4 Raws previous combined, 21 disqualifications or no contests as well. So we're very much in a rinse and repeat stage here. But the Outlaws keep the championships, and the LOD are left holding the bag, or I guess in this case, the bucket. We'll move on to the boot camp match, though. Beforehand, there's a Triple H promo, and he says that Sergeant Slaughter's generation, this isn't Sergeant Slaughter's generation. This isn't the new generation. This is the Degeneration. He also says that he's going to stop by Sergeant Slaughter's house after the match and let his wife smoke on his peace pipe, and then walks away.
Wow.
This is prime 1997, folks. This is also 2 weeks removed from Hunter telling Sarge that he's going to teach his wife what a soldier standing at attention really looks like on national television on Monday Night Raw. Slaughter just
absolutely, completely sucked. And
you think so?
If you look at the time they gave all of the other matches on the show, it's like this match got 7 minutes. This match got 6 minutes. And then this match got like 18 minutes. 18 minutes for Triple H and Sergeant Slaughter in a boot camp match.
Would you say this is the start of the trend of Triple H having the longest matches?
Oh, God. Insufferably long promos, insufferably long matches. God, this sucked.
While you're on this rant, I had one for you that I think you would like. Well, not like, but the DX entrances, when it started, it got better over time, but the flashing back and forth, it felt like it was like Vince saying, hey, make an entrance theme for Kevin Dunn. Cut away. And it got worse with Shawn.
Kevin was there. He probably made it.
Yep. But yeah, it's like epilepsy to the nth degree.
Hunter opens up the match, telling Sergeant Slaughter to put his chin on his balls. By the way, that's how this gets underway. I'm glad we had that moment in wrestling history. But Sarge didn't do too much to start the match here. Brian, to your point earlier, he was 59 years old.
Or finish.
He was 59 years old in this match.
49.
He was 59.
Oh, was it 59?
It was 59. I was going to say, you look pretty good for almost 60. I didn't think that was accurate. I was going to check that with you in a minute.
I thought he was 49.
Yeah, no, he was almost 60 years old when this match happens. But maybe the most confusing moment of the entire night. Let me check my math here. This is a boot camp match, which Sergeant Slaughter is supposed to be created. And halfway through the first 5 minutes, he attempts a pinfall on the outside, and the official tells him that he can't do that. Shouldn't Sergeant Slaughter know the rules of his own match? If this is supposed to be named after him and it's his match, shouldn't he know to not go for a pin cover outside of the ring? I just thought that maybe the rules should apply.
And it was weird. The ref just only came in to do the pinfall and the submission, which I don't know. It just kept taking me out. And sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, good.
Brian is right.
I am right. I was just looking it
I
up.
apologize.
It was
All right, well,
he was born in
I
1948.
I stand corrected, gentlemen.
He
I
was
apologize.
49.
You know what?
You still
And I
look
wrote-
better than he did.
You know what? In my notes, I look back
Way
and I
better.
wrote, he took the over the corner turnbuckle bump at 49 years old. So listen, I must, dyslexia sucks, guys. I'm sorry. But for everything that he was limited in doing, that turnbuckle bump that he took completely over the top rope to the outside was pretty impressive for an almost 50-year-old man.
Yeah,
And-
he had
and
he
he's very
has
out of
3
shape.
bumps. He did all 3 and nothing else.
He was definitely gassed like really quick into the match.
And they tried saving him a couple times because they do the infamous Mark Ayton spot, which Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels did in the Iron Man match, where they go over, they take out the timekeeper bell to just try to basically buy some time to get through an hour-long match. And this was clearly an attempt to get Sergeant Slaughter his win back. Spoiler alert, it never comes. But Sarge takes a backdrop out of the ring as well. And there was a little bit of a hush in the crowd when it happens. I think people were legitimately
Thought he was
concerned that
dead.
Sergeant Slaughter might have died. Yeah.
Oh, God.
We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but China gets involved as well. She grabs a chair, and Sergeant Slaughter throws some powder in her face. Probably stole it from Shawn Michaels' bag, but he locks in the Cobra Clutch. China comes back in. Slaughter hits him below the belt, and the helmet hits the pedigree, and that's it. And I'm with you, Brian. I feel like this match probably went on 11 minutes too long, especially when we cut everything else in this show short.
Terrible.
that was another one. Blatantly, he could see China in the corner. I mean, they made it work, I guess. I don't know. I didn't have much to say other than Sarge took some bumps for his out of shape, aged at that time. And I don't know, a lot of Irish or a lot of slow whips I have. Sorry.
Brian,
they
we
just have
talked,
belt. I was like, just put the belt away for God's sakes. Like,
yeah, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but it was really impressive how many guys didn't mind selling for China in this era. Like Sergeant Slaughter takes a couple of punches here and she sells it pretty well. Like Ken Shamrock took it a couple of weeks ago as well. What were your thoughts when this is happening and you have this one-of-one unicorn in China that is, we've never really seen anything the likes of her before, and you have all these guys that are willing to make her stuff.
Well, I don't know
look
if you would say they were willing to, because I do know during that period there were a lot of guys that they did not want to have to sell for China. And at least, you know, it wasn't, I mean, she was a big muscular person. It wasn't like she was built like Sunny. But, you know, the thing was, Shawn had a lot of political power. Obviously, Triple H and China were right there with him. So I think everybody knew, may not like it, but that's what the job requires, and so we're gonna do it.
and it seemed like a lot of times they didn't have a choice, especially like later on we'll see when she throws Shamrock into the post. It looked like that was just all her.
Yeah.
There might have been a couple times they weren't selling. We move on, and Jeff Jarrett has promised to make his debut, which would be a re-debut, but they don't bother mentioning that at all. But his debut in WWF at the time, he was booked. This was booked by Commissioner Slaughter, and he's going to take on The Undertaker. Jeff Jarrett says if he wins, he'll be the #1 contender, which I don't think that's exactly how that works. But
no, there was no follow-up to him winning this match that involved him being the #1 contender.
It probably had a little bit to do with the way he sold during this match, but we'll get into that.
This match also was not very good.
Yeah, Taker comes out and no-sells everything Jeff Jarrett does out of the gate. When he does finally get his hands on Jarrett, the crowd goes absolutely the most this crowd has been into this entire night comes in this moment, and it's literally just the Undertaker throwing punches. But it just gave us a little bit of an insight to even at this point that the Undertaker was still just as big of a draw as there was in the industry at this point, despite being very, very far away from the main event scene, but clearly building to something at this WrestleMania. But the clothesline that Taker drilled out of the corner in this match, Jarrett kind of like scorpions in midair and clearly rings his own bell when he lands on his back, and just it looked like he gave himself a concussion at this, because Taker clearly doesn't touch him, but he like folds in half backwards and lands on the top of his head. A little bit of a scary moment there. But I thought it was really cool how Taker was willing to sell his leg for Jeff Jarrett in this, because obviously setting up the figure four and all that. But we all know what's coming here. It's been the same thing that's been happening for the past couple of weeks. Taker sets up Jarrett in the corner. The lights go out. The place goes nuts. As over as the Undertaker was in this moment, it kind of felt like Kane was the biggest deal on the show when this happens. People were really digging the legit fear that was built into Kane at this time, Brian.
Yeah, well, it was a new character, and Undertaker didn't sell for anybody, but he sold for this guy. And they picked the right guy. Glenn Jacobs was a great Kane. He had the Undertaker mannerisms down. He was a big dude. They put on the lifts, so he was basically the same height. And he did a great. I mean, think about how many fake Undertakers they had.
He was a much better Kane. He was a much better Kane than Luke Gallows was. That's for sure.
Yeah, they had all sorts of guys. He had that fake Undertaker for a while in like '95, and being the Undertaker, it's like a great gimmick. But Mark Calloway was, he was the right guy. And they happened to pick the right guy for The Undertaker, and they picked the right guy for Kane. And people saw him as a real threat. And the match itself was like, God, I was watching this match, and, Undertaker, and it wasn't at this point yet, Undertaker eventually became like a really, really good worker. Mm-hmm. And all of his big matches ended up being great, like his big WrestleMania matches. We're still a few years away from that.
Uh-huh.
God, this match was just like, it was so slow. It was just a plodding match. It was like every Undertaker match where it's like, you beat the guy, you beat the guy, you beat the guy, you beat the guy. Like if the match is 10 minutes, you beat the guy for 8 minutes, do like a minute of heat. And to be fair, nobody wanted to see Undertaker sell. Right. So, if Undertaker's going to be selling for 8 minutes, the crowd's going to be dead. So, like, this was the alternative. But still, it didn't make for super exciting matches at this point.
We've already calculated that I'm really bad at math, but I think I counted 945 Irish whips during this match, by the way.
Yeah, God.
Yeah, the only heat that Jarrett got lasted a minute, and then here comes Kane. Like, there's another one, just not really a definitive finish, and not much even of a comeback. And I don't know. I just, the only thing I liked about the match is that the crowd was throughout the most of it, but once his gong hit, like that's what
they're into the dong, dude.
Yeah, my fiance was sitting there, and she's, to say okay with wrestling is an understatement, but she said Undertaker was her favorite, but the gong went out and she even popped up. She goes, I'll watch this match.
But when Kane comes out, though, Jim Ross refers to him as the one-eyed monster and wonders if this is the night that Kane and the Undertaker will get it on. And you have to wonder if there was like a running joke of things that you could see if you could work into a broadcast, because it kind of feels like that was very out of left field. But Kane chokeslams Jeff Jarrett, and which gives Jarrett the win, as you just alluded to, Brian. And we get Taker and Kane face to face, and Jarrett points out that Kane's bigger in this moment, so those lifts actually shot him up a little bit above Mark Calloway as well. And this is really the first time we've seen them face to face since Bad Blood. And Kane slaps Taker, does the ring pyro, and Kane leaves. And after the ring clears, Howard Finkel lets us know that your winner is Jeff Jarrett, and he gives us the strut celebration. In my opinion, the worst ring gear I've ever seen anybody wear voluntarily.
And that's what he wore before.
Yeah, it's horrible.
He didn't have a blinking hat this time. There's at least that.
I don't know if that's a plus or a negative. We get a Mark Henry interview who's been on IR and lets us know that he's a couple of weeks away, and he says that he's going to be rooting for Stone Cold in the upcoming match because Stone Cold is his man, and which is interesting because we know that Mark Henry eventually joins the Nation of Domination in the next couple of weeks alongside TheRock and those guys that are going to be along. And this next match, the main event was good. This to me, I think this was the best match of the night. The crowd was not more into anything more than TheRock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and from the promo all the way through the interviews to the actual match. And when Rock comes out and he does an interview with Doc Hendricks beforehand, he says he corrects him because Doc Hendricks refers to him as Rocky Maivia, and he lets him know it's TheRock. And we are completely moving on from that moniker. And I thought it was interesting the way they were standing because, as we know at this time, Farouk is the leader of the Nation Domination. He and Rock are kind of standing side by side, and D'Lo and Kama are kind of off into the back, where we're kind of letting people know, hey, here's the push, and it's coming for this Rock character.
Yeah, I can't say it's the best match because, I mean, they really didn't get a lot of time to actually wrestle. I mean, it was mostly, all of the interference early, and then they kind of start doing the match, and then there's all the interference again. And they had some cool stuff, like, D'Lo took the backdrop onto the glass.
Yeah.
Yep. And then what I thought was actually very clever in this match. So this was obviously the period, and it all culminated with the death of Owen Heart. And actually, it didn't even culminate with that because they kept doing it. It was like there was a wrestling war, and we're just gonna do whatever. And all this dangerous stuff, all of this crazy stuff, these stunts. Anytime you're working with glass, I don't care. It's dangerous. But what I did think was clever was they did a spot where I guess it was Kama had to take, or maybe it was Farouk. One of them had to take a chair shot. And
Farouk took the shot.
Yeah, so he's leaning up against the side of Austin's truck.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that Austin swung the chair, he actually hit the truck. He didn't even hit Farouk.
Sounded way louder.
Like a full-on, unprotected chair shot to the head.
Smooth,
so at least, in some ways, they were still kind of being safe. But, that was going to continue to go out the window from that point forward.
Well, and this is, you talked about the start of things and things kind of happening for the first time. On the previous Monday Night Raw that Mike and I talked about was the first time we saw Stone Cold drive a vehicle into the arena. And now this is a theme. This is the same truck from the week before. And we know this is going to lead to Zambonis and beer trucks. But this is kind of the catalyst for, hey, we got a really big reaction from him driving that truck into the back part of the arena last week. Can we get an even bigger reaction if he drives it down to the actual ring tonight? And can we use it as a prop? And it clearly goes over really well. The thing I want to point out, though, D'Lo Brown, I think, invested in some acting lessons after this match. So to your point, he gets the backdrop on the windshield and then eats a stunner for the 7th time in 4 weeks on the top of a truck. And then there's a moment where Kama and Austin are coming around the corner, and D'Lo Brown is sitting there tapping the hood of the car and looking at them, and then sees the camera and then just deadpans like he's being knocked back out. Not a great look for D'Lo Brown at this moment because he looked like he was just a kid in the candy store sitting on top of a truck, but he was supposed to be unconscious. Not great.
No, and Brian, we kind of have like a running gag on the show here because I said I don't know how D'Lo could always twist his head that fast, so I kind of do it every time we bring him.
There you go. Yeah.
It's very impressive.
It's very hard to do with the headset on, anyways. But yeah, I did like the stunner though on top. I think he sold that really well.
But pretending to be knocked out was a problem in this match, though, because at one point Austin knocks out Kama too, and then they just show him sitting on the stairs looking at the crowd, not even engaged in the match where he's supposed to be unconscious on the outside of the ring. But when Rock starts getting his heat in this match, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian or Mike, if you remember, this is the only time I remember the crowd just chanting 316. They weren't chanting Austin. They weren't chanting Stone Cold. They were just
I don't remember that
chanting
chant much.
And obviously he's one of the most over guys in the business, even at this point. But it's the only time I can remember that specific chant for Austin, and it was the only chant he really got this entire match.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like 316. I was like, they usually chant Austin. I was like, is this the only time they do that? So I'm in agreement, and I thought the match was it was more of an angle than a match because it was very short and just basically
the match itself was nothing really.
Yeah,
that was good action for what they did. You could see that it was going to be a big feud, but
right.
And this particular match,
poor Poor job by Kevin Dunn, misses the referee stunner. It's like he only saw it on the replay.
Yeah, I really hope we get more out of these two young upstarts, this Stone Cold character
these
and this
two young.
Rocky.
You know the thing also
Hope
about
it
this
works out
match.
for him.
I should mention this because we're going to be going into Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
One of the notable things about this show and all of the shows prior is this ring sucked.
Very much.
This ring was hard as a rock. And you could see, these guys are taking these bumps and it's like there is no give. And it's like taking a bump onto and they were very, very hard rings back in the day.
Yeah.
And it was the Vince feud with Austin when Vince himself had to start getting in the ring to do matches, that all of the rings ended up being
weird how that works
to make them have more give. So really, I mean, God only knows, we should probably, there ain't much to thank Vince for, but we should probably thank him for getting into the ring, because otherwise we'd probably have these same horrible rings today, because they don't change things quickly. And these rings were better for everybody. Those old rings were brutal.
Yeah. And I even thought that when Taka took a power bomb, I think, earlier in the match, and the way his head
horrible.
No give. That's like, oh my God.
Yeah, and you see it a couple times in the main event too. But as you guys pointed out, there's a ref bump. Rock pulls out some brass knucks. Looks like we're gonna set up. The bad guy finally gets over, but Austin delivers a stunner. You could tell they were a little pressed for time, or they knew what they wanted to do with the Ken Shamrock entrance that we're about to get to, because we get another referee like that to come in and get this quick count. Austin does the entire match with his vest on, which I thought was hilarious, by the way. He never takes it off until he gets his championship at the end. Stone Cold Steve Austin gets his Intercontinental Championship back from TheRock that TheRock had stolen previous weeks, but we're not done with this feud, and we still got a lot to get to in coming episodes. But we do get to the main event. It's something
I should mention, by the way, that part of the length of that match might also have been that Austin hasn't been back that long after the Owen Heart tombstone that destroyed his neck.
4 months, 1 week.
Yeah, so I think that at this point it was like, okay, well, things were different back then. I mean, his neck was not 100%. So I think it was like, okay, what do you think you can do? Let's get in there. Let's see what we can do here. Because they wanted to push him all the way, but he'd been injured. So I think that probably
surgery,
had
right?
Not yet.
Something to do with it too.
Right.
Yeah. So we go to the main event. It's Ken Shamrock versus Shawn Michaels. And I really wonder where this idea came from, because we get the Ken Shamrock backstage interview with Jim Cornette, and we're Shamrock basically only repeats what Jim Cornette asks him. He doesn't actually answer any of the questions. But we get that cool moment where we see Ken Shamrock walk out from the interview spot out to the gorilla position. And 2 weeks prior, we got Stone Cold Steve Austin in the production truck flipping switches and all that. But it really feels like they saw all of this backstage presence on the other channel and some of the reactions that they were getting from the outsiders when they were invading, and trying to take that and making it feel organic on the WWF show. But it was a really cool look, because we didn't get to see much of that prior to this. And I kind of thought it was going to be a setup for DX to jump Ken Shamrock or something like that. But it was really just a way to see another angle that we hadn't necessarily seen.
It was just adding drama, because I think this was the first show where they did that dun 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 dun, that music as the guys are walking around in the back. And they did that for years, really, until TKO. They don't do it anymore now.
Right.
But they did that on pay-per-views for a long time after the show.
But China. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just wondering, is that what maybe Triple H remembered and he liked those shots and brought him back? Or I'm not sure.
I think it was more Lee Fitting.
Oh, Lee Fitting. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. That's
right. China and Hunter are back out with Triple H, or with HBK to come out for the main event. And I love how they started selling this as the power versus speed at the start of this match. Shawn sells the backdrop, takes the Ric Flair over the corner bump and all of that to show how strong and viable Ken Shamrock really is. And when you talk about Shawn Michaels' ability, I mean, the reference that he could wrestle with a broomstick in the ring is overused. But I mean, you see how true it is, because Shamrock is still incredibly green at this point, and he really made him look as good as he possibly could throughout this entire match.
Well, I watched this main event about 7,000 times when it first happened. I like I said, I'd been doing the backyard, our gymnastics, YWF for, we still did it a little bit after we couldn't do the gymnastics facility anymore. But my first actual match in a ring was August of 1997, I believe. Might have been
just a few months previous to
97,
this.
90. I think it was 97. But anyway, the point of this is, like, I was watching these matches. I was watching, like, as a match, if you just watch the match, this is like a good main event with a bad finish. Okay.
Yeah.
But like, so. I watched this match and I just watched Shawn Michaels work. This guy was absolutely unbelievable. And this match on this show, I believe, was Shawn Michaels in his absolute physical prime.
Oh,
because
great point.
His next pay-per-view is when he destroys his back versus The Undertaker. Then he does WrestleMania, destroys his back worse, and then he's gone for years. And then, he finally he's able to come back, but he works differently and he works smarter. And he had, if you look at like the quality of his matches after he came back, if you're looking at like which match had 4 stars or whatever, he had more great matches after he came back. But as a worker, as an athlete, this was the absolute pinnacle of Shawn Michaels. And, Ken Shamrock had wrestled in the 80s for a while. He was a pro wrestler before he became an MMA fighter. He was Vince Torelli, which is where Vinny V got the name Shoulders Torelli because his name was Vince. So we stole that. But he'd done a little bit of wrestling. And then obviously he went into shoot fighting, went into UFC, left and went to pro wrestling. So it wasn't like he was coming in with no experience. He'd wrestled before. He'd been trained, but he was green.
It had been 13 years, right? Am I correct in between stints?
I think so, yeah. But he'd had a lot of, he went into this match, and it's not like today where you get Logan Paul, you guys work on a match, you get everything move for move, you do the whole shebang. They went in here and they called this match in the ring. And they probably had some stuff there at the end that was choreographed, but you could just watch this match and it's like Shawn is calling every spot. And he's calling this and he's calling that. And he is carrying this guy to such a, it's like, I was blown away when I watched this match as a kid. I watched it again now. I was like, my God, this guy is the greatest. And he sold and he sold and he sold and he cut him off and he gave him the comeback. And the other thing that about this, the whole show, okay, that people have forgotten because nobody does this anymore, is in the old days, babyface does the shine, gets cut off, heel gets the heat, and then always before the comeback, it was the long rest hold. And I think fans didn't understand the rest hold. They just hated a chin lock or whatever. But it was always you would do a long rest hold. The babyface would fight out and make a comeback because they had a minute to rest to get ready for this big comeback.
You got to get the crowd coming
this
out.
Rest hold leading to the comeback. You never do that anymore. But, he makes this big comeback and then, they had the stupid finish or whatever. But I thought Shawn was incredible in this match. He was in incredible shape, which probably was more than just being in the gym at that time.
Yeah, probably.
But because I think his back was bothering him a little. And so it wasn't purely cosmetic. I think there were probably things that he was doing to try to help with his back. But still, he was so great in this match.
He threw himself at the ground for a living.
What was that?
He throws himself at the ground for a living at this point in his life. You know
his bumps were great. His selling was great.
We talked about the mat earlier. He takes that pop-up power bomb at the end of this match, and you could just see him flat back, and like there's not even a bounce to it. He just as thud. You brought up
spot, the little thing you never see anymore. You guy punches him and spit goes flying. Shawn did that in every match. Nobody does that anymore. He was so fast. Like now you watch like Nathan Frazier, for example, or Braun Breaker. They're selectively fast. Actually, Braun Breaker is selectively fast. Frazier tries to go fast all the time. But the problem is he goes so fast that things get all messed up.
Yeah.
Shawn is in there with Ken Shamrock, a green guy. This guy is so fast, but he's not too fast for for Shamrock.
And he's not running to high spots either. He's being fast. He's making things count.
Yes, he was at his physical greatest in this match right here on this pay-per-view. And then Doom is about to strike.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well, we talked
sorry.
we talked about how green Shamrock was and Shawn being physical peak. Shamrock clearly not. Got very gassed at one point.
Yeah,
in this
but you know what it is? Because I can talk about this too, because I was going to mention that. So wrestling, it's I don't know about nowadays, because a lot of things have changed. If you watch wrestling today and you watch this show,
Sure.
but like in the old days, you know, there's a lot of different kinds of cardio. Okay, you go to CrossFit, it's a totally different kind of cardio than Stairmaster, riding the bike, doing whatever. Your heart rate goes super high, you get blown up quicker. Your heart rate is a little bit lower, you can go longer. There's aerobic capacity, et cetera, et cetera. You watch these matches in the 80s. I was watching Mid-South the other day. Dude, these guys are flying in the ring. Flying. And they never get tired. We're talking Mr. Wrestling, who was like in his late 40s, in the 80s.
Yeah.
Dude, that guy is working and he's going and like you never see him breathing hard, because the key to wrestling in the 80s and you know, parts of the 90s and Shawn Michaels till the end of his career is you're so light. You don't touch each other. You know, I'm holding this mic harder than you would hold somebody to do an Irish whip. And the idea was you never exerted yourself in, you know, like lifting, pushing, pulling.
Right.
You never exerted yourself like that. Everything was light. You worked together. And so your heart rate never exceeded a certain level. And so unless you sucked, you never got blown up and you could just keep going. So if you watch this match, Ken Shamrock is an MMA fighter, dude. Like,
Well,
that guy fought mixed martial arts.
Well, and one thing that you could probably attest to too, with your jiu-jitsu background, is it takes a lot if somebody's laying on top of you.
Exactly.
Like
because
that in
you
its own
don't
right.
want to. It's exactly jiu-jitsu. It's exactly like pro wrestling. You don't want to expend energy. You want the other guy to expend all the energy, and you're moving around him or taking whatever you're given or whatever. But the point is, in this match, Shawn is moving. He is moving. Dude never gets blown up. But Ken Shamrock, because he's green, he does everything with so much intensity. He's grabbing, he's pushing,
That's kind of his gimmick
lifting,
too.
and like he's sucking wind, dude. He's dying out there.
Even
because it's a totally different kind of cardio. He's wrestling like a guy doing MMA. Shawn is wrestling like a guy out of the 80s. And, you know, a normal fan, I don't think, sees that. But you watch this match, and Ken is just, he's so gassed.
Yep.
And Shawn is just going. Because he's not expending any energy. He's just moving.
Hunter gets
everything Ken does is with so much intensity that he's dying out there.
Hunter gets involved like 4 different times in this match, and I think a lot of it was to try to get Ken his air back, because Triple H is just rabbit punching him over and over and over.
Well, one
and
of
over
them,
and
Hunter
over
goes
again.
to punch him, and like, and you know, Shamrock is slumped on the ropes. His eyes are closed. He's just dying. And Hunter punched him. He doesn't even know. So Shamrock no-sells it, and then he opens his eyes and goes, or whatever. I was like, oh my God, he's dying. But this was a guy who was dying, and Shawn got this match out of him.
And looked like he could go another hour, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Shawn could have gone easily another hour.
But we know it's Shawn tunes up the band and goes for the win. Shamrock counters it, gets the belly-to-belly, sets up the ankle lock. DX jumps in.
Hideous finish.
Yeah, and they attempted to try to keep Shamrock strong and keep him built up and keep him as a viable on the back burner contestant for a future world title shot if he can improve, etc., etc., etc. That's not what this did, though. It really just made it seem like, hey, this guy's not ready for the main event. We're going to show you that on national TV.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing is, like, Shawn, if you watch the match, Shawn is just selling and selling and selling and selling and selling and selling for the guy. But when you watch it, you're like, Shawn is totally out of this guy's league. Like, this guy can't even hang with this guy.
You
when the
could see
idea of the
difference.
match is supposed to be Ken was so good, Shawn couldn't do anything with the guy, and his dudes had to run in for the DQ. That's a story that is being told, and they actually were doing that. But, Ken is so tired, and Shawn is so awesome that when it's over, all you get out of it is like, man, thank God the title didn't change hands here, because other guy's way better than that guy.
Our eyes were telling us a much different story.
Yes.
And I was wondering if that's because Shamrock really didn't sniff the main event, really. Again, it was mainly just mid-card for the rest of his career at WWF. But at the end of the match, though, we do get the fun surprise return of Owen Heart, who just blasts Shawn off. I just saw his neck just snap off the ropes.
Well, they talked him into coming back, and they obviously paid him a lot, but he was supposed to be a main eventer working with Shawn. But then, of course, Shawn gets injured, hurts his back, retires, and it's like it was all out the window. But, like, had that not happened, I mean, who knows what would have happened? I mean, the reason Owen Hart died was he was given this goofy blue blazer gimmick coming down from the rafters, whatever. If he'd been pushed as a main eventer, I mean, he was a great worker, and, he wasn't like the world's best promo, but like, the right guy, the right circumstance, he could do a good promo. And then, if he would have been pushed as a main eventer with Shawn Michaels over the course of all of 98, they may not have given him the blue blazer gimmick. And then you think about all those guys that came in from WCW, the Benoits and the Guerreros. He would have feuded as a top guy with all of those guys.
So much potential.
Well, it's a couple things too, right? It's and we talked about this a couple weeks ago with the Jim Neidhart thing, where he comes out on Raw and it's like, oh, we're gonna put him with DX, and it kind of felt like Vince was checking, like, hey, if we bring you back, can you be in the same locker room with this guy? Can we trust you to be along, like, to not go into business for yourself? We're going to do a little bit of a heat check here. And obviously they put him with DX. DX gives him the low blow, leaves him laying, blah, 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 blah. But it almost felt like it was the way of the WWF saying, yeah, you can come back to work and we'll give you a paycheck, but can we trust you? And Owen Hart obviously comes back here, goes on to be the Blue Blazer. And according to a lot of sources, it was because he didn't want to do the love angle with Deborah and Jarrett, because he was married at home. So there was a couple of things there as well. But the one thing I wanted to point out in the Owen Hart attack is he does like almost the Game of Thrones mountain crushing the head scene as well. And he's like legitimately digging his thumbs into Shawn's eye. And
they wanted Shawn to bleed. And so it was like a hard way cut. So you thought he got punched, but it was.
But Owen's notoriously one of the best ribbers that there ever was in the business behind the scenes. And part of me wondered if he just wanted to mess with Shawn a little bit and dig into his eyes and not cut him and just got one in on him. But I loved hey, let's let Owen escape through the crowd and get away without letting DX get their hands on him. Because it almost does the exact opposite of what we just talked about with Shamrock, right? It's hey, we're letting him get over, but we're letting him get out. And it does two things. It makes Owen look strong, but it also lets you finish the In Your House Degeneration X pay-per-view with Shawn still as the champion, Shamrock with a win, and the last scene you get of this pay-per-view is all three members of DX standing tall, despite going out technically as losers. And I thought it was really interesting booking.
It was a good ending. Like the finish sucked.
Yeah,
but it was a good match. It was a good ending. It set up what should have been like a really big feud, but things change. Plans change.
Well, that is In Your House Degeneration X. Brian, we wanted to do a couple quick questions with you about the current state of professional wrestling before we let you get out of here. Obviously, some pretty big news over the last couple days with Nick Khan selling off some stocks, WWE, TKO, and Vince McMahon sharing some lion shares. Are you concerned with the future of the company at this point?
No, not at all. I mean, they've they are riding high. And, it won't stay at this level forever, obviously.
Yeah.
There's going to come a time where people aren't going to be wanting to spend this money on WWE tickets, and they'll make some changes. But, as a business, a lot of people were upset about Truth and other people are going to be cut and such. But, it is a publicly traded company. And, I know people like the idea of, well, they make so much money, they should just be taking care of all of these wrestlers and et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, they have to run a business. and it's going to suck for certain people. It's going to be great for other people. I mean, all of the controversy about Truth, I like R-Truth, but that guy's 53 years old.
Yep.
He had made big money forever. I mean, he would have to be an absolute like financial moron to have no money right now. That
He'd have to be as dumb as he appears on TV.
He's loaded. Okay. Yeah. He's loaded. He is fine. And, you know, people get angry about this person getting cut or this person getting cut. But what people don't like to talk about is if you like WWE even a little bit, okay, one of your favorites is making more money than they've ever made before.
Fair point.
And, you know, these top guys nowadays, like if you're a big fan of Seth Rollins or Becky Lynch or Rhea Ripley or whoever, they are making so much money nowadays. And, you know, people are going to be rotated out. You know, their contract will expire and they'll be done.
Apparently that happens to Braun Strowman every time it comes up, apparently.
Hey, you know, I from day one in this business, I was always taught it's not what you make, it's what you save. And, you know, there is no excuse for these people that have had contracts for an extended period of time to have no money now. I mean, TKO is paying everybody enough to live comfortably for the rest of their lives if they're even decent with their money. And if you want new people, if you want your Stephanie Vaquers and your Julias and your whoever being brought up, other people are going to have to go. It's the way of the world. It happens in AEW, happens in WWE. It's happened everywhere all over the world for all of eternity. It's just the way things work. It sucks, but it's the way things work.
Right. And I actually had a thought on the current state too with, and especially with us talking about the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars. Obviously we know what happened with WCW, but what could have been if they had their, you know, any kind of a finger on the pulse at WCW after WWF got hot. We're kind of at an interesting time with AEW and WWE because it seems like obviously WWE is not going anywhere. They're all cylinders are going up, but interest, like big interest, is coming really back in AEW, and I feel like we can finally see that what could have been in the swinging back and forth with popularity. What's your take on that, Brian?
Well, AEW has seen a pickup of late, which is good. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's nothing better than having two strong companies.
Yes.
And, you know, WWE is doing a lot of counter programming of AEW. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's another one. Fans get very upset. Like they're trying. I don't think that TKO wants to destroy AEW because if you look at like, you know, one of the main reasons they had this giant growth is because Cody jumped over from AEW. That was a big thing. And, you know, they brought in Mariah May just debuted and, mm-hmm. you know, they'll want to pick up people that AEW made stars. But what I don't think they want is for AEW to really grow. Yeah. I think they want to keep them at a certain level. They don't want to kill them because there is value in having other places to take talent from, right. But they don't want them to get too big. AEW, I think the one thing I would say if Tony Khan asked for any advice, which he won't, but if he did, I would say the main thing is focus on you. Mm. This, like, WWE is going to do what they're going to do. Focus on you. Make AEW the best product you can make it. Focus on your guys. Focus on your booking. Focus on your TV. Focus on your shows. Make it the best you can because you're doing great right now. I mean, Absolutely. Can you say, well, you know, Dynamite, they debuted at 1.3 million. Now there's whatever. It doesn't matter. They make enough money off their television deals and pay-per-views and whatever that all of their wrestlers are being paid very well and they're not losing money. And they can do this for years and years as long as they maintain their television deals. Their current deal is only like a 3-year deal. Right. So like get this thing going, get the numbers steady, get another deal and just do your best. It's like, it's okay to be number 2. Okay. It's okay. TNA is doing great right now, but they are clearly a distant number 3, but they're not fighting to be number 1. They're not even fighting to be number 2. They are content to be a successful number 3. If at some point things start to crash in WWE and AEW has the opportunity to try to get to number 1, fine. If it happens, it happens. But for now, number 2 is fine. Number 2 is great. Be the best number 2 that you can be at this moment.
It's an interesting line to walk, though, right? If you're the people in WWE, because you don't want to kill them off. You kind of need them, but you also can't let them beat you because it looks really bad on you as well.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like, they're not beating him anytime soon. I mean, the gap is vast right now. But there have been times where the gap is closed, and they do not like the gap closed. That's the issue. We do not want this gap to close.
Yeah, and the TV rights is interesting. So that's obviously what ended up killing off ECW. But as long as you got a spot at the table, and maybe it's a little bit different now with streaming services and people starting to cut the cord, which is why ratings are probably less as important as well now too. It's going to be interesting to see how these the three that you mentioned, WWE, AEW, and TNA, are looked at if streaming and platforms become more of the way of the world, which it seems like they're going to, and how that's going to affect how business is done.
Yeah, I mean,
as well.
ratings are still super important.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the key is that, and this is why I say it's okay to be number 2. You're not sniffing SmackDown right now, okay?
No.
But at the end of the day, if you've got the list of the top shows on television, and AEW Dynamite is regularly in the top 5, whatever happens with TBS TNT, you're probably going to be okay because somebody's going to want a show that's regularly in the top 5.
Right.
And if you're doing well for Max, if Max is regularly putting out press releases, AEW is doing well, AEW is doing well. Something happens, there's always going to be a streaming service. And as long as you can be top 5, you don't need to be number 1. You just don't want to be like off the chart, okay?
Yeah.
And if you are doing the best you can and you're regularly, you might be a distant number 2, but you know what? You're still number 2. If WWE is not available to a streaming service or a channel that's looking for something that can boost where they are, you're going to be fine. So do your best.
That's Bryan Alvarez. Follow him on Twitter at Bryan Alvarez. Subscribe to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Bryan, we appreciate you spending an entire hour and then some with us, doing this with us tonight. We'd love to have you on in the future as well.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me. And very quickly, f4wonline.com/new. If you've never subscribed before, you can get half off using that link. So f4wonline.com/new. 84 podcasts a month. Observers, historic. You could go back and read the Observer on the Degeneration X pay-per-view if you want to.
There you go.
Hear Dave bury that one. So anyway, thank you guys.
Bryan, I appreciate it.
Save yourself some money. Follow Bryan online and subscribe to the newsletter today. This has been Analyzing Attitude. Again, like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us an oh, hell yeah in the comments. We'll see you next week.